there, everybody. I'm James Packard with Newsy. Welcome to Tell Me More. Newsy and Chicago Ideas have partnered to bring you an in-depth conversation with some of today's most influential thought leaders. If you're a theater fan or are familiar with the art scene at all, you'll recognize the folks we're going to hear from today. Kenny Leon is a Tony Award-winning Broadway and film director. He's known for his work directing A Raisin in the Sun, Fences, The Wiz Live, and is currently directing a Broadway production of American Son with Kerry Washington and Stephen Pasquale. Phylicia Rashad made a name for herself starring as Claire Huxtable in The Cosby Show. She's since acted in more than a dozen television series and held major roles in several movies. In 2004, she became the first black actress to win a Tony Award for Best Actress in a Play. It's clear from this conversation that Rashad and Leon know each other well. They've worked on nearly a dozen projects together, and as you're about to hear, may team up for yet another. In this conversation, hosted in Chicago as part of a book tour, they encourage each other to open up about their past, their successes, and their future. We're bringing in at the beginning, where Rashad asks Leon about his upbringing and how he got his start.
So we're here to talk about this book now, right? How many of you have read this book or read portions of it? Yes? Yes?
Y'all got to get that book. I'll stay here all night and sign them.
Yeah, you're going to sign some copies after we finish talking.
Oh, I am?
It.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're going to.
Thank you.
But you speak so beautifully about your mother and your grandmother. It is just. So talk about them.
The book, when I start writing it, it's the triangle of my grandmother, my mother, who was 15 years old when I was born, and the teachings of August Wilson. Everything that I know, I can trace back to my mother, my grandmother, and August Wilson. My mother was 15, and she left me to stay with my grandmother in Tallahassee, Florida. She went to South Florida to make a life. She was pregnant with my brother, and my sister was 4. So I had the blessing to stay with Grandma. We stayed on a small farm, no plumbing, no indoor plumbing. We lived with outhouse. Some of y'all don't know what outhouse is, right?
No, they don't know.
Yeah. So we lived like that, but everything I got in my early life was from my grandmother. We would sit on the porch and play games like, that's my car, that's your car. And it was great. And then I later moved to St. Petersburg, Florida with my mother after she ran into my stepfather, whom in the book you'll find I didn't get along with, and you know, in a great way, but we can talk about that later. But, and then together they made $10,000 a year. And Angela Bassett and myself, we grew up in the same town, St. Petersburg, Florida. We were in a program called Upward Bound. Mm-hmm. Yes. And Upward Bound, I tell you, since 9th grade, I had to take classes on the weekends, and I went to school in the summertime. But Upward Bound prepared low-income families for college. And were it not for Upward Bound, I would not have gone to college. Were it not for Upward Bound, Angela Bassett would not be the great actress that she is. And if you get the book, Angela signed a quote in the book as well. So, I mean, we ain't got to talk all about this book, but this woman, we've done, I counted the other day, we've done like 10 things together. And in this business, to do 10 things with anybody. And in fact, the first thing that we did together was a play called Blues for an Alabama Sky. You young folks know that, right? It was a play by Pearl Clegg. And Pearl wrote the play, and I was running the Alliance Theater by then. All the stuff is in the book, too. It's just, juicy stuff. But anyway, Pearl wrote the book, and we said, well, who are we going to get to play the lead? And the book was about a very beautiful woman who had been beautiful all her life, and she was supposed to be like 48, 49 years old, and she was just concerned about younger girls being beautiful and life-changing and stuff like that. And I said, well, the most beautiful woman in the world who would be perfect for this would be Phylicia Rashad. She says, I went to school with Phylicia. We went to Howard. Hey, she went to Howard. I went to Clark College, 2 historically black colleges. So
that was one of the most fortuitous meetings of my life. After 8 years in the Cosby Show, there was no work for me.
There was no work
There
for
was
you.
no work for me. A year passed, and I went into Jelly's Last Jam.
Mm-hmm.
And after Jelly's Last Jam, another year passed, and there was no work for me.
Mm.
And my agent called and said, this young director is coming up from Atlanta, and he would like to see you. And blah, 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 blah. So I walk into this room to meet this young director. And he's so smart, and he's so clean, and he's so polite, and he looks at me, he said, Miss Rashad, I know you don't know me, but you can ask, and he started naming about 5 people. And I just looked at him and I said,
I was 34.
you were a kid. And I said, and I looked at him, and I just met him. We were 5 minutes, and he said, but you could ask, and he started naming all these people that he knew that I knew. And I just looked at him and said, I don't have to ask anybody but my daughter, who was 8 years old, right?
Who just left Broadway in St.
At
John's.
St.
She's
John's.
a great actress.
Right.
She's on Billions. Anyway.
And it started this great...
She was 7 then, right?
8.
8. She was 8 years
She
old
was
then.
8 years old then.
Wow.
And this started this great artistic collaboration. And I can tell you, as an actress, you wonder if you're ever going to meet that person who is going to be your director. That person who sees you as no one else sees you. That person who sees you as an artist capable of many things beyond what most people envision. I met my director. Let's back up to college days at Clark.
You interviewing me, or am I interviewing
I'm
you?
interviewing you, and I'm
No,
saying,
I'm going to interview you tonight. I want them to know about you.
now I want them to know about you. Okay, so
It's going to be a struggle tonight.
okay, so let's back up. Let's back up.
Okay, back up.
Clark Atlanta University, and you are a political science major?
Right. After I left my grandmother, I went to live with my mother, got into the Upward Bound program, and then I was the first class to integrate Northeast High School in St. Petersburg, Florida. Now, in this city, we all wanted to go to Gibbs High School because they won all the state championships. It was culture for our city. In St. Pete, the black folks lived on one side of town, white folks lived on the other side of town. My grandmother and mother raised me to be someone that was going to bring people together.
Though from humble beginnings, Kenny Leon has enjoyed huge success in his career. And according to Phylicia Rashad, brought decency to the theater world. Let's dive back into their conversation.
You always maintained this connection to people, and you began to use theater as a way to bring people together. This is what I noticed when I came to Atlanta for Blues for an Alabama Sky. You made everybody in Atlanta feel like the Alliance Theater was their personal theater.
Yes.
You did that.
Yes. And you helped me do that because you performed in that play, and then you came back and performed Medea. She played Medea in the Greek tragedy, and she was the best Medea in the world. I mean, it was, I still want to do that play on Broadway with you playing that role. That was like incredible.
How did you get everybody in the theater on board with this concept and initiative of making all of Atlanta feel
Right.
like this, ownership?
The short story is, when I was at the Academy of Music and Theater, I wanted to direct. And one day, the guy gave me an opportunity to direct a play called The Wishing Place. It was a play where snow fell through the kitchen, leaves blew through the bathroom. It was just crazy, but I loved it. And the guy said he didn't think that I had the skill set to direct. He said, we want you back as an actor. I left the company then. When I left that company, I ran into a woman, Timothy Neer. She said, you should apply for this program, the National Endowment for the Arts Directing Fellow Program. So I said, okay. She said, I'm coming to the Alliance Theater as Associate Artistic Director, and they've just named an Artistic Director named Bob Farley, who's coming in from Alaska. Fill out the application. We want you to come in as Resident Director and work on initiatives on diversity, a one-year program. I said, cool. I left the Academy Theater. I wrote this thing. The committee said, Kenny, we want you, but we don't want you to stay in Atlanta. You need to leave Atlanta. I looked at a map. I was afraid to go to New York because I thought it was like crazy and busy, and I was like, I'm a country boy from Tallahassee, Florida. I picked Baltimore, Maryland. Went to Center Stage in Baltimore, Maryland. Worked there a year as a directing fellow. In that same year, I met August Wilson. I went to see Fences on Broadway. For the first time in my life, I'm sitting in a Broadway theater, and I start hearing my grandmother's rhythms. I start hearing my mother's rhythm. It's like we know what it smells like on Saturday when your sister is getting her hair straightened. We know what that is. We can share it with other cultures. We know what it smells like when you're cleaning chitlins. We know what that is. And so I saw that, and I heard my mom's rhythms on the stage, and I was like, theater is more than just entertainment. It is something else. It is something life-affirming, life-sustaining. And I count. I am equal to my white brothers. I am equal. And I saw that in 1987, right? So I see that then. That year passes away. When I finished the fellowship, I was offered 3 jobs in the country. One of those jobs was as Associate Artistic Director at the Alliance Theater, in which I was trying to get in when I wrote the application. 2 years after that, I was named Artistic Director of this $15 million institution. Yes. I was probably the only black person running an institution then. While I was there, I ran into a guy who had donated money to us. He said, Kenny, what are you going to do next? I said, what do you mean? I'm at this theater. I'm making $250,000 a year. This is a great thing, great job. He said, every 7 to 8, 9, 10 years, you should change jobs. Make yourself over. And so when I look back now, I realize that is what has happened in my life. You know, I was with that first company for 7 or 8 years. Then I was with the Alliance Theater for like 8 years, gave my resignation, left in year 10 because the work had been done. And then I started True Colors. And that same year, I got 2 Broadway shows. And the first Broadway show was with you, A Raisin in the Sun with Phylicia Rashad. So I say all that to say, and I talk about this in the book, what I say is that we become prisoners of our situation. We're like, oh, I'm making $40,000. You become prisoners of that $40,000 instead of offering the world what you have. And now I've learned that as a strength. So I haven't been afraid to leave something to try something else. You know, when I did Hairspray Live, that was 800 people on the crew. I've never worked on anything in my life with 800 people. And if you ask me how to do this, I don't know. But when they hired me, I knew I could do it. Right? We can do more than we think. And so often, those of us who are different from each other because of race and disabilities or whatever, if we just go half the way to meet each other, I just think it could be a much more beautiful world. And that's what I've committed my life to and all of my storytelling, and I hope it makes my grandmother proud, but that's what it's about.
We're back on Tell Me More. We're hearing from Kenny Leon and Phylicia Rashad on how they broke boundaries in the creative world. So what path are they leaving for future generations?
Always opening doors for people to enter into. You're always doing that. Not only for people to find work in the theater, not only for people to grow as artists, but for people to engage in and support the arts.
Well, speaking of that, do you remember when I asked you to do A Raisin in the Sun, what you said?
Yes.
Can you tell these wonderful people what you said when I asked Phylicia Rashad, I'm doing a Broadway play of A Raisin in the Sun. I would like you to play the lead female. What did you say?
Why do we have to do that play again? And why do you want me in it?
You said, why do I see you? And I said, it's one thing as black artists that we don't do. We don't revisit our work and make it fresh for a new generation. And that's our responsibility. And sometimes plays become a cliche of themselves. So there was some bad production of A Raisin in the Sun, you know what I mean, that we talk about in the color museum. But I thought that people didn't really revisit A Raisin in the Sun. And so when I revisited it, I said, look, let's see how old Lena Younger is. She says her husband died when he was 40, da-da-da-da. I think she is like early to mid-50s. Wow. I think she is strong. I think she is sexy. I think she's this. She's not an old woman, and she's not ready to die. And once we kept talking more and more about it, and she started digging into it, she said, ooh, I got a Lena for you. And she did. And she was the first African-American woman to win the Tony for leading actress in a play. Which was actually a shame.
Well, when they told me that, I said, what happened? Nobody ever was nominated before?
Right.
When they said, you know, you're the first, what does it feel like to be the first? I said, the first? What happened? Nobody was ever, because before me, there was Cicely Tyson, there was Ruby Dee, there was Diana Sands. You know, before me, there was Esther Roll, there was Clarice Taylor, there was Frances Foster. Before me, there was Rosalind Cash. I mean, before me, there was Eartha Kitt. Before me, there were so many wonderful actresses, and all of them different, all of them beautiful. And I just didn't understand that. But I guess somebody had to be the first. Well, shall we open it up to questions from the audience?
My question is, I was in New York over the weekend and I saw Hamilton, and one of the songs from that musical is Who Lives, Who Dies, Who Tells Our Stories. So in the context of the Black American narrative, as directors, as actors, on a major national stage, what level of influence and how do you use your position to reshape the Black American narrative that has been largely told by the majority?
Every day we live the truth of ourselves. First of all, I mean, that's a very important question. But every day you live the truth of yourselves. Being an actor and being a director gives us an opportunity to present that truth that people live every day. My question is, do you need a play to know who you are? Do you need somebody to sing a song for you to know who you are? Do you need something external to know who you are? And if that is so, how could you ever tell a truthful narrative? If you're always looking outside of yourself for answers, how could you ever deliver a truthful narrative? Kenny and I are alike in this regard, and I think I can say this. We believe people are much more alike than they could ever be different. And what we do in our work, whether it's The Wiz or it's Hairspray or Medea, is present that to people.
Right. But also, it's like when I say take you wherever you go, I think about the world that I want, which doesn't put anybody down because of race or culture. My grandmother said to me, if you're going to be in that business, you're either going to probably have to be a snake or a snake charmer. And I'm not a snake. So I'm always realizing that America has this great racist thing around its neck. And then the other thing it has is capitalism. So I want to make money. I want to do what I can to rid the world of the ugly. So you have to understand how it works. So when I work on something like The Wiz, I'm not going to do it the same way a white director whom I respect may do it.
No.
I have to bring me fully to The Wiz.
Got it.
If I bring me fully to Hairspray, that's why I said when you look at Hairspray, you realize that the most important part in that production, that live telecast, was Jennifer Hudson singing that song about bringing the young people and the old people and the black and the whites together. If you take that out of it, for me, I would not have done that live telecast. But I spent a lot of time on delivering that moment. And that moment, you will get it as viewers in a subtle way, like, wow, you get a piece of, you know me. If you see any production I get, you get a piece of me. So I want to take me fully. I'm going to be the gift to the whole culture by taking me there fully.
I wanted to hear what you both had to say about, for the content creators, the young people who are looking for opportunities and seeing a new landscape in streaming networks or cable or wherever. What do you see the differences, and what opportunities do you see for young people who are looking to make opportunities out of where there weren't opportunities back in, say, the 70s or 80s or early 90s?
Yeah, technology has really changed many things, yes? And allows people to self-produce and self-publish. I look at some of the things and I mean, I have to say, young people are so fearless and so energetic and so worthy. I lament the absence of arts education in schools. Because creativity exists and isn't going anywhere. It's not going away, is what I mean. And when it isn't nurtured and it isn't guided, it seeks its way to somewhere else. But it's going to continue because this whole planet, our life, everything, without creativity, there would be no life. This had to be created, is what I'm saying, you know? So the young people are really, they're wise in ways that younger or earlier generations were not. I think that's probably evolution.
Yeah, I would add to that, there are more outlets now for the writing, but I think we compromise our value system when we don't remind yourself why you're writing it.
Yes.
And if you chase the money,
Yes.
chasing the money would deliver lesser work instead of the real importance of storytelling and passing the stories on. And if we were to trust the values of why you're writing, the money will catch up to that. It might take a little longer, but I promise you it'll catch up to that. So I just wish young folks weren't so quick to sell their stories or to sell because they want to make that paper.
Okay, that's going to do it for this installment of Tell Me More. You know, we're working to bring you more in-depth conversations like this. If there's someone you'd like to hear from in an extended format, just let us know. You can send feedback and suggestions to @Newsy on Twitter. We'll see you next time.